Welcome everybody to MogTalk episode 143. Today is May 5th, 2018, and today we will be discussing the magicians of Final Fantasy XIV, the magic welders, the black mages, the red mages, the summoners. I mean, you guys probably only play one of those, but it's okay. We'll talk about all of them today. If you guys haven't watched Final Fantasy, or if you haven't watched MogTalk before, it's a show based around Final Fantasy XIV, where we discuss everything from Savage raiding to Chocobo racing, and today is going to be as interesting as we can make the casters, of course, of Final Fantasy XIV. That sounded kind of degrading, didn't it? Like sarcastic in a way. I didn't mean it to come out that way, but Balana, I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. You're not a mod in the chat.
Oh, come on, give me my sword back.
You guys, well, I just never gave that account a sword. So let me introduce everybody here before we get too deep into the show so you know who's talking. First, you guys might be familiar with him. Balana, he's been on it, 10% of our shows, I think.
I think I'm a little bit over that now.
Maybe.
We're 140 something. I think this is at least my 15th time on here, so.
You're crossing the line. The line. I can't have you on for a couple months. All right, Balana, tell everybody who you are real quick.
Hey, yeah, I'm Balana. I've been playing Final Fantasy since the relaunch. I've been involved in leadership with Elysium since forming. I fight bosses. I'm not like a world first contender, but I think I do okay for myself.
You're on the board every time, so I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I got 11th last time, so that's something, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, that means there's only like, what, 70 people ahead of you? No. Hold on.
80.
80 times.
8 times 10 Frosty. There's 10 teams above me.
Okay. Well, okay. All right. You got it. I was close. Close.
You're getting there.
All right. And we've had this gentleman on the show before. He's an excellent caster, Mr. Sfia.
We're going with that? Okay.
No, I don't know. Sfia.
Good enough. Hey, perfect.
All right, there you go. How you doing, buddy? Tell everybody who you are.
Good. I'm Sfia. I play Black Mage predominantly, but dabble in all the casters. I play for Elysium. Yeah, I do World Prog. That's me.
Balana, which role, if you could just say, hey, this is the caster I'm playing, what's the caster you define yourself as?
Summoner.
Okay, there we go. Just making sure.
Let me grab this real quick. I forgot to put this on. I got my little
yeah.
pin and everything.
There you go. Defined it. So in case people were curious about who's who.
Yeah.
All right, and then for the first time we've had on the show, Mr. Jump here. He's a very renowned, I don't know, maybe some people hate you too, Red Mage, right? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm Jumpman from the Behemoth server. I've been playing since 2.0, and I wrote the Red Mage guide for Moogle Media.
Well, then there you go. If you've got into Red Mage recently, you've probably read the guide. If you are at all serious about playing Red Mage, are there other guides out there that are competitive with your guide? Like if someone says, "Hey, you need to learn Red Mage," should they point them to any other guide besides yours?
Not that I've seen.
Okay. Little ego boost.
I say the other casters too. I dabble in them. I'm do alright with them. So.
Okay. So we kind of have a Black Mage, a Summoner, and a Red Mage, right?
Yeah, but Sfia's a better summoner than me, so.
I don't know about that one.
I guess so.
If you had better ping, you'd blow me out of the water, but.
You're just being modest now, man.
Well, in the end, though, I mean, you guys are all casters. You're not like particular jobs, right? You play the caster role, which sometimes means you're a machinist.
Oh,
right?
You've got to be everything when you're a caster.
Yeah, that's pretty much comes with the caster role. You got to be able to adapt to play different DPS jobs and whatnot.
And it's interesting to say that because, I mean, when you're thinking about someone comes to this game and they're like, all right, I'm going to play caster. You don't think, and you want to be a serious raider, you don't think, oh, well, in the end, I may not be playing caster. I may be playing a machinist. But that really just comes down to the current state of things, at least. It really just comes down to if you're doing speed runs. Then you go into, like, machinist, right?
Yeah.
For progression, caster is guaranteed a spot for one reason, really, and that kind of sucks, and we'll probably talk about it later. But as it stands now, you will have a spot as a caster if that's what you want to play. For how long you have that spot, that's the problem.
Well, let's talk about the group dynamic of 8 people and bringing in caster in there. What role is the caster filling? Is it filling damage? Is it utility, support? What are we looking at with them?
Depends on what caster you're playing. I mean, obviously, if you're playing red mage, you're the res mage, and you're in there to save your healer some mana and some swift cast. That definitely helps them a lot for prog. Summoner can also fill that role, not as well as red mage, but Summoner brings way more damage and some utility as well. So
is it like on a scale here from support to DPS, we're going red mage, summoner, black mage?
Yeah.
Okay,
I agree with that.
All right. So they're not really just in a particular, they fit whatever the group needs, but you have to play a certain caster to fit that niche, whatever that group needs, right? But I mean, in the end, they always just need red mage.
You'll see some like serious, world prog groups progging with summoner or red mage, but you won't see them progging with black mage at all. So
okay,
yeah, not lately, no.
And that's odd, right? Because you think about black mage, and that relates you to Final Fantasy. You don't think about you think casters. Final Fantasy, you go to Black Mage. You don't go to Red Mage. You don't go to Summoner. Those are just kind of on the side, I think, at least. So it's kind of weird that they've been taking a sideline, and they've been taking a sideline for a while, right? When were, besides, I guess, A Realm Reborn, when were Black Mages a highlight of the group?
It had to be Gordius, right? Would be the last time that they were strong, you could say. No, they're okay now. But they were strong in Gordius, and then everything kind of just got too strong around them, and it's been that way since.
Why is that? I mean, why do you think that they've been taking such a hard sideline?
The Machinist and Bard arms race that happens during Heavensward.
Yeah.
Midas comes out, they buff Machinist over Bard, which puts it over a lot of stuff, and then when Creator comes out, they're like, oh, we gotta buff, Bard to be competitive with Machinist. So they get bumped up even more. And the casters are just like, what's going on here? I thought we were supposed to be doing the damage. And now these people who can restore everybody's MP and TP are doing the most damage as well. Why do you
run around?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in a group dynamic though, I mean, are we looking at there should always be one caster, one physical ranged, and then 2 melee?
Well, I mean, the thing about why casters were always a lock-in, at least earlier on in raiding, is that there was typically some sort of mechanic or some gimmick where you needed to do magic damage. There was those the dolls in T4. There were the cages in Midas, but I mean, people ended up just throwing healers in there to deal with that. And finally, Creator rolls around and they're like, let's not do any sort of, magic damage requirement thing. And that's when the double the Bard Machinist meta really started rising up. It was like, oh, we don't actually need a caster. But during progression, I'd have to say that casters bring 3 main things: APOC, Addle, and Raise. And that's the reason why you bring a caster.
I mean, do you need APOC or Addle actually for a lot of progression that's going on?
Well, I mean, need is a strong word. Like when you're progging, you're not trying to, speedrun. You're not trying to play the bare minimum. You're trying to overcompensate for everything. You're not trying to optimize. So, big tank busters coming is magic damage. You might as well throw APOC there just in case, that, the tank messes up their cooldowns or something, or having that extra mitigation for the tanks helps them manage the rest of their cooldowns better for the whole, tank buster lineup. So in the end, if you're like progging seriously with your group, you'll communicate with your tanks how you want to APOC which tank busters and whatnot. And sure, you don't need it, but it definitely helps. And that's kind of what progging is all about. You don't need to have a raise every 5 seconds, but when shit hits the fan and half your team dies, having the red mage raise everyone every 5 seconds will definitely help.
Well, the raise, right? But when we're talking about range wise, I mean, you got Palisade, right? They can kind of fill the role.
that's why you still take one ranged, but like the Akmorn in Ultimate Bahamut, for example, that's completely magic damage. Palisade won't do anything against that.
All
Same
right.
with the Flare Breaths.
So do you guys think maybe in the end, because they did this with Paladin, of course, right? Paladin, I always reference Paladin stuff. They made it to where you block, physical and magical damage, and so they took away that element as well. But when you went into the fights where you needed to do magical damage in order to push something, should they bring that stuff back just to make that a requirement for casters being in the group, or should they just say screw it? Should they put these arbitrary things in fights to require casters in there?
I think it's good to have there, maybe not in every fight, but the problem should be addressed elsewhere other than like, you only need this because of X gimmick or Y gimmick. There are more wholesome ways to actually address why casters are the way that they are. Yeah. As opposed to just...
Tell me a wholesome way.
Oh, let me think. For starters, a better way to fix casters being is probably the weakest role in the game would be fixing the utility. For something that's supposed to bring so much damage, and they're afraid to give them any more because job balancing is very, very hard, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
The utility is completely outshone by other jobs which do more damage at times. So they need to provide unique utility. You have things like Black Mage, for example, which is supposed to be resourceless effectively. It's even been, said by devs that it's supposed to be the best mana resource. So mana battery with mana shift, and that's just untrue. Mana shift itself would be one area where you could tackle why casters suck, because it's just infinitely worse than the other alternatives which physical ranged have for refresh.
I mean, it's kind of odd. I think Square Enix does its own little weird balance in the background, and we don't realize that as good players, because good players know how to make all the jobs fit together with their skills and ability, like line up trick attack at the right time, lining up certain moves with these different roles. But those values don't exist if the players don't know how to work together as a group, right? Like if it's just throwing up trick attack whenever they can, it has less value than bringing another stronger melee. If you relate that down, I guess, down to casters, if you just bring in a player that just comes in and he's a decent player but doesn't use... Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, utility needs an experienced player versus non-utility that doesn't need an experienced player.
Right, but the thing is, like, most casters don't really have a trick attack or whatever to really be able to optimize themselves around a group. I mean, you've got Summoners got Aether Pact, and you've got Embolden with Red Mage. So there's like little bits of optimization you can do there, but there's nothing as huge as like, oh, we're going to line up everything around your ability like you do with trick attack.
Well, I mean, what about with the physical ranged? And bringing them over, bringing... a caster.
Like, why do you bring physical ranged over caster?
Yeah, why would you do that, right?
Well, it's the same reason it has been for the last year and a half now. Resource supply is just significantly better. The damage has been historically way, way higher,
right?
Especially through Heaven's Ward, and it's been that way through probably the start of Stormblood. It's being more balanced out now with Machinist not being as strong as it has been historically.
But that requires like working with the group, right?
It takes a lot of synergy and like good play.
Okay.
And Square Enix likes to tune around the bottom end of things. But
exactly, that's kind of what I was wanting to go towards, is that Square Enix tunes like to people who aren't great players. They tune towards just an average, I'm playing this because I like Final Fantasy, I want to play an MMO player. Not, hey, I want to be a really good MMO player. Because if they did that, things would be really goofy. I think, at least, for most of the population out there. Am I wrong for assuming that?
No, my understanding is that, well, they don't want people to be good, they want people to not suck at their game.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess
There's a big difference there.
they've been working hard to make sure people don't suck at their game. So, I guess another unrelated caster question, but just something to kind of go off this, as you guys are all experienced raiders. How do you guys take in the difficulty level of Savage not changing? They're going to keep that difficulty level throughout forever. This is where they want. This is their spot. They're not going to increase it. They're not going to decrease it throughout the entire expansion. What's your opinions on that?
I mean, I wish they had stuck to what they said, but at least we have Ultimate, and a 48-hour prog or 24-hour prog or whatever is cool, I guess.
Yeah.
If not for Ultimate, I'd probably be upset about it. But I think having every other prog only be like a 2 or 3 day prog is nice, because my group cannot really take a week off every 3 months from work. So, you know, just having to take only 1 day off and then killing ourselves for 1 day and 1 12-hour prog day, and then clearing it in the next 2 or 3 days with like a 6-hour day. It's nice for us, because then we can still do pretty well in the rankings. We can still get server first if we want. But then if they try and make Savage harder, like somewhere in the middle between current Savage and Ultimate, then all those other groups that can like throw 12 to 16 hours a day are just going to mop the floor with us, you know? So personally, for me, for my group, I like it. And then when Ultimate comes around, people are spending weeks in it anyway, so we can still keep a steady pace. But
I can fix your camera, Balana. Sorry. I'll make it better for you.
It's all good. It's all good. Goku's just giving me shit. So.
All right, here we go. Don't worry. Fuck him. All right. But yeah, no. Sorry, Jump. I got distracted by the shit talk of Balana. But yeah, no, if you have it to where you just do a sprint, that's kind of nice in its own way, but it leaves you with this kind of void for a little bit until Ultimate comes out. And then Ultimate's the exact opposite. And it's just one fight that you guys are progressing on for the longest amount of time. Which is that not mind-numbing?
I have some friends that they have been progressing since Ultimate came out, and they're just now like getting into the last bits of Golden Bahamut, and I'm just like, I'd burn out so hard, man.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
All right, what do you think, Balana? Do you think that just having one fight is a little bit too crazy? Like one just difficult fight that you just have to repeat over and over and over again?
I mean, the one difficult fight can cause players to get fatigued, especially if it's like a 20-minute, 18-minute fight like we had with UCOB, because you don't really see that like progression. I mean, you've got a little bit of it, and then like, okay, we're done with Twin, done with Nail, but if it's a situation where you don't have like a council fight like that, you don't really have those checkpoints to show progress, and I think people might be more likely to get burned out.
Mm-hmm. Well, if people send in screenshots of the HP bar of Ultimate, then that's their progression, right? They can say, hey, this is where I've made it, guys. This is my checkpoint. Oh, Jesus. That's going to be so difficult. I hate tracking Ultimate. I like it, but I hate it at the same time, because you don't get anything official, like recorded anywhere throughout that entire that race that's happening. You just have to depend on screenshots that are out there until someone clears it. Then you're like, check mark, one person, this team cleared it.
I mean, it sounds like it'd be a lot easier for you to manage.
It's easy, easier
around until the end.
Yeah, but the excitement's different, right? The excitement is built off of going through Twitter and getting screenshots for the people who are actually posting that stuff. Mm-hmm. And everyone usually posts, oh, I got a picture, I cleared this. Well, not everybody, but when you clear a fight, you just screen cap it, throw it on Twitter, and you're gone. When you're going through a fight, you're like, should I screenshot this? Is this too much information to give out?
It's true. It's true. There is a little bit of trepidation, like how much information you want to put out there.
Yeah, and so it's hard to follow as a race, but until someone clears it. But you know what? Somebody's going to clear this fight within a week, so it's okay.
What, the next Ultimate you're saying?
Yeah, within a week, 100%.
It's a bold claim, Frosty.
Yeah.
I study community complaints, SE reactions, and what comes out after what they say is going to come out and how it all works. The only thing I got wrong was the other ultimate, but that's because I undervalued what they were going to do. I was like, they're not going to make it too difficult. It's just one fight, right?
Somewhere between second and final coil.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about when they're developing caster roles, I guess. They're developing for 3 types of different players. There's 3 different people who will play this game. There's the people who want to play this game and say, hey, I'm playing a black mage. I'm a black mage. Hey, I'm playing a summoner. I want to be a summoner, and that's what they are, and they stick to it. Then you have the type of player that's, I want to be useful to my group in progressing. I want to make sure that I'm going through and I'm a useful part of that group. Then you have the guy that's just like, I want the highest fucking numbers I can put out and be and speed run and go as fast as I can and be super hardcore and destroy every bit of content. And so I guess the point I'm getting at is, do you think for the people who are going out there and saying, hey, I want to be a black mage, that they've made these roles to fit those jobs? Like when you play black mage, do you feel like you're playing a black mage? When you play a summoner, do you feel like you're playing a summoner?
Well, like in relation to the other Final Fantasy games?
Yeah, in relation, like you come to this game, the allure is this is a Final Fantasy nostalgia theme park. Do you come in and do you feel happy and excited that you're playing this role?
I think Black Mage has hit the spot pretty well. It's on the mark. The other jobs, I'm not too sure about. Summoner's always kind of been a bit weird. I don't quite think it fits the sort of aesthetic that other Final Fantasy games have given that role. More recently, it has been better with the whole Demi Bahamut and all that cool stuff, but previously it was kind of just, there's a little bird that shoots stuff, and that's your summon. And that was it. And you're a dot class otherwise.
Yeah.
Balana, you have an opinion on summoners, I'm sure.
Yeah, summoners in this game are basically warlocks from World of Warcraft. Like, it's pretty much the same exact thing. When you're thinking about a summoner from an actual Final Fantasy game, you're thinking of, they call in some crazy Titan summon in the middle of the fight and might just kill everything. But then they're, your utility outside that's a little bit low. So you can't really have something like that in an MMO like this.
You don't think you could?
If they had like a 5-minute cooldown, that's 90% of their damage. I mean, that'd be interesting, but
yeah,
I don't think it would mesh too well with the current zeitgeist.
Okay.
Tell you what, when I first started playing this game and looked up that Summoner was coming out in 2.0, I expected it to play like, if you've played Dissidia, Yuna in the original Dissidia should summon little parts of her summons and they do attacks for her. And I thought that would be the way that it would work. So when it turned out that all you got was a little pet that kind of does nothing, it was a little bit disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jump.
Yeah.
Do you feel like
Not
a red
sure.
mage?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't played Red Mage in any of the other Final Fantasy games, so I can't answer that question too well.
Okay.
From what I read on Reddit, a lot of people are kind of upset that, Red Mage tends to be jack of all trades in other games. Like they can do actually, sufficient healing and whatnot. I remember a lot of my friends were saying, oh man, Red Mage is going to be out. They're going to help heal. The speedruns are going to be 1 healer, 1 Red Mage, 4 DPS, 2 tanks and stuff. You definitely can't do that. Very Cure is nice, a nice single target heal. And honestly, if you wanted to, if both your healers are down, you could probably keep your main tank up with Very Cure. But realistically, you're not going to bring Red Mage for the healing at all. And Very Cure ends up mostly for being for DPS. So oddly enough, even though it's a heal, you precast it and you get a dual cast proc to land on the boss as soon as it lands. So I've seen on Reddit a lot of people complaining about that it's more of a, a silly caster that goes in, does a few hits, and then jumps out again. But I think as a class itself, Red Mage, just being a caster, I have fun with it. I like it.
You get to jump around.
Yeah, I get to displacement and grief my healers by displacing out of AoE range all the time. Fun. I like it.
And now when we're talking about Red Mage, I'm actually referring to all you guys because you guys all do Red Mage for prog, right? Or am I wrong with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good old prog mage.
Yeah, I think there's zero reason to not be a red mage for prog.
It's funny actually.
Zero, you don't really. It's also so easy to play red mage to like a basic prog level that you have no excuse not to.
Yeah, and it's funny how when Ultimate came out, a lot of people switched out of red mage to summoner for whatever reason. A few reasons I heard. One being that whenever you had more than 2 people die on nail, it was very hard to recover, and even if you brought everyone back up, it generally wasn't a recover. So they started feeling like the many instant raises of red mage was not as useful, as well as people couldn't use displacement. They just kept fucking dying to mechanics every time they used displacement, which is just like, don't hit it. But people hated it. They couldn't get into melee range when they wanted to. Otherwise, they'd hit the melee with AoEs and stuff. And people actually switched out of red mage for ultimate early on in prog.
Well, that was also UCOB was also when Summoner got their first rework. Well, the big overhaul for Stormblood. So a lot of people were kind of curious to try that out, and their numbers were really good at the time. So it made kind of sense to give that a shot with the devalued effectiveness of rezzing and the increased damage brought by Summoner at the time.
Yeah, but I still think ultimately once you get past nail, or even in nail, if you had like really good DPS, you could still the red mage race still had a lot of usefulness. So I think it probably wasn't the right choice, but it made sense for a lot of people to switch to summoner. But definitely red mage should probably.
I mean, honestly, I guess if you're a red mage and your group's doing really good DPS, they're prone to dying more often because they take a bigger risk, right? Maybe
not necessarily.
No,
I don't agree with that. I think good DPS comes like safety is always first. DPS comes second.
But you will eventually do more damage if you cut total line a little bit more than everyone else and you get lucky, right?
To a degree, but I don't really think that's a good way to get more damage. And
it's
I don't
not.
think
But I mean, FF Logs has spawned this whole like community of how close can I cut it, right?
If that's why people are asking you to play red mage, I don't think you should play red mage.
I got you.
I mean, like there are ways to increase the DPS that aren't taking risk either. That like a lot of prog groups that don't speedrun, they don't really like coordinate their buffs as much. But my group, when we were progging, even though we were progging and we weren't like taking risk and like trying to do stupid shit, we'd still line up embolden with trick attack with foes requiem and stuff, and make sure that we had the high DPS to get through the phases even with a lot of deaths. So
okay.
And Goka brings up a good point in the chat in that and kind of goes back to having to be flexible as a caster. You change the role based on what part you're progging on. So I mean, if you're going deeply into the blind stuff, you don't know what's going on, red mage is great because you can res and get back on your feet. If you want to crank up the damage a little bit, you bring in the summoner, you still got a little bit of res, you get some party buffs. But then we want to crank up the damage to 11, you just don't even bring in a summoner, or bring in a caster at all. You switch over to machinist, and that's the optimal max damage right now.
So would it be would it be more interesting for you guys if that ramped up to black mage instead of ramping up to machinist?
You'd think it would make sense, wouldn't you? But apparently that's just not allowed to happen in this video game.
Yeah. It's funny. Go ahead.
I also don't think that machinist is currently all that. I think it's really close with like top performing casters. Summoner is really strong at the moment. Black mage can be if you have like the god run, but like there's just so many levels of RNG in this stupid job.
When you say stupid,
it's so much fun, but it's frustrating when you're trying to maximize.
Yeah.
I don't think that the difference between machinist and other options now is as gross as it has been before, which makes it okay if you're like, I'm only going to play casters. Like if you're versatile within the casters, I think that's okay now, as opposed to like if we need damage, you can't play it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like every time I do a show and we mention the name Black Mage, and if that show gets to the Japanese community, the entire thread of conversation is about Black Mage. It doesn't matter if it was just like one sentence. It turns into a whole conversation. It's like the hot topic right now. How do they make Black Mage, how do they fix it? How do they make it not an undesirable position in a raid group?
Sfia, go for it.
how to make Black Mage not undesirable. I mean, the obvious and I feel easy answer would be give it raid utility, which is what they did every job. You know, they gave Radiant Shield and what's it called? The Contagion to Summoner, which helps out the team. They gave it Ether Pact with Devotion. They gave Red Mage Emboldened, so they could give Black Mage something like that. But honestly, I would just much rather see it do more damage, because it feels like it's more in theme with the way that what the job is. It's just a big nuker, and I don't feel like it does that even after the most recent buff, which wasn't insignificant. But that kind of goes to show how far behind it was before.
I mean, do you think increasing a job's DPS is going to actually make people bring it to the group?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all people care about. Damage is king in this game. Like, there's a point after prog where it doesn't actually matter, because you have so many tools across so many other jobs that if Black Mage simply did outdamage everything else, which you'd think it's supposed to, same problem with Samurai, you would bring it at that point, because if it kills it faster, if it's optimal, that's what you do.
I mean, you could start running situations where you'd like start stacking the team around the Black Mage. Then you run like 3 summoners
Right.
and Black Mage and have a tag uptime like crazy.
It would take a really, really fine balancing line to find where it's best to have when you have other things synergizing around it, but not best to have when you just throw in 4 Black Mages.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, at the same time, too, I think their way to balance that is just to throw in the LB penalties, but, like, then they have to make sure it doesn't go past that LB penalty, right? If it's, like, you're removing that much damage from the group by removing the LB bar from increasing that much, then...
I mean, I was being a little bit silly bringing up the triple summoner thing, but, I mean, you could run Black Mage and 1 summoner right now, and it's still going to boost them a fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I think the fix is going to be down the line adding more classes and jobs to the game, so that there is a possible like magical meta instead of just a physical meta.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really far down the line, though. Unfortunately.
A couple of years probably. As for making Black Mage more desirable just by giving them more DPS, it's really going to depend on the group, because like, yeah, sure, if you have Black Mage so strong that they deal more raid DPS than other DPS that give utility to other DPS, then yeah, they will be desirable for speedrunning groups. But you know, you if you're not like a super hardcore person, you don't have like an elite team that wants to do speedrun, and you go on Party Finder and you look for speedrunning party finders, which there are, they're not going to take a Black Mage or Samurai, no matter how much damage you do, because people on Party Finder that are looking for speedruns, they're not really looking for a fast kill time. They're looking for a clean run where they can do good DPS. And if you, as a Black Mage or a Samurai, can't do anything for their DPS, they're not going to take you.
Well, screw those groups. I don't care. I don't. These people who just sit there and they masturbate to FF logs all day, I don't care about them.
It depends on the player, you know. Like some people, they want to raid with their friends, so they don't have an elite team. They want to try and get, you know, a speedrunning group in Party Finder. They're not going to get one as a Black Mage or a Samurai.
You have to get one that's centered around making your DPS good. So like, this is a Black Mage speedrun group or Black Mage FF logs party.
That's actually what happens. You know, you'll find a Party Finder up, hey, a speedrunning group, and you know you have all the jobs are locked to, you know, jobs that give you raid utility, but the person that made the Party Finder is a Black Mage or a Samurai. It's funny actually.
So, in the other direction, then, if you did want to give it utility, like they always do, I feel like it's already had its identity and defensive utility taken away from it with role actions just neutering the job by taking away APOC. That's literally all it had. It's all it could provide that was unique to it, and they took it away. I would not like to see Mana Ward be AoE because we have too much shielding already in this game. It's stupid. Mm-hmm. Maybe offensive buffs of some sort. I don't think defensive really needs to be there, but like you've got actually useless buttons on Black Mage right now. You could treat Enochian like you do Bard songs, because Enochian actually doesn't do anything currently. It's exactly the same as just being an Astral Fire or Umbral Ice. Just punishes you for potentially a few seconds if you mess up really badly. So maybe give that, like, as long as you have Enochian up, everyone around you gets X% damage up or has X% faster cast times.
Just,
Anything like that.
Just make leyline shared so everybody piles in on top of it.
No, thank you.
It's the worst.
Base all the AoEs there. No.
People are already talking shit about my FF logs. Guys, I've done like 5 raids this tier. I've been so out of the loop just with all the other background work that I've been doing. And that's why I got you guys coming up here and informing me. All right. Here is a question real quick from Oakenfell in the chat. How do you guys feel about LB generation? Should SE enforce a group that has at least 1 melee, 1 ranged physical, and 1 caster? Or should double ranged physical or triple melee groups continue to have no penalty? Now, I remember something was done in this nature in Heavensward, and I was pissed off because I was excited about Machinist. And I was going to do Machinist Bard in the group when it wasn't like a big, great thing, right? And I think we were penalized for that.
Yeah, it didn't stay live for very long. I don't remember exactly when it was. It might have been the build up to Midas that they made the LB change where they wanted to really lock in kind of your DPS compositions to specific roles. Like it was the 2 melee, 1 ranged, 1 magic. And they're like, if you don't have that, then you're going to hit by LBA generation. They're moving it off the double class. So you could run double monk or whatever as your melees and not get hit. And people went a little bit ballistic over it. So they ended up rolling it back and not having that go live. And
well, it pissed me off. Because my friend wanted to play Bard and I wanted to play Machinist, and it was bad for that to happen. And I think it was just weird to me. And eventually I guess that complaining led to the curse of Dragoon, Ninja, Bard, Machinist. Would you want him to bring it back?
Well, the complaint for that also was mostly that they announced they were going to do that in one of the last 2 live letters before the patch. So, you had your raid group situated already. You guys have been ready for a few weeks. You're ready for the next raid tier. And then 2 weeks before the patch, by the way, if you have this comp, we're fucking your LB generation. That's what made everyone get ballistic. And everyone was just like, that's fucked up, man. Now we got to change our comp. And that's why they ended up saying, all right, you know what? You're right. That was too soon before the patch. We take it back. And then they try to bring something similar back later on. I forgot how it went.
Did they?
I think it was just the raid finder. Like if you queue into it, it pulls in 1 melee, 1 ranged, 1 caster, and 1 of something else. They'll try to build a team like that, and people are like, "Oh, are we going to get locked into that now? Is that going to be the thing we have to do?" And like, I think for Midas, what people were getting kind of in a tizzy about, because before Machinist was known to be real beast, was they want to run triple melee. And they're like, "Oh, we can't run triple melee if we have these restrictions going, and we're getting nerfed LB because of it. We're not running different jobs just because of this roll lock." So.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised triple melee hasn't really... Well, I guess it doesn't matter if you have a Bard. It's all physical damage, too. But, like, triple melee did make it pop its head up in the Chinese world race, right? Because I think the first team to clear A4 S back then was a triple melee group. But... All right. So, again, are we against them making these restrictions in order to force caster in the groups, though? Are we just against it? Or would you guys actually... You're all casters. I know this is kind of a biased question.
I'd rather they address caster issues as opposed to team composition issues.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for groups like yours, Frosty, if a group wants to prog as Bard and Machinist, they should be able to, don't take that away from them.
Mm-hmm. I think it's stupid to have double jobs. I think that kind of makes it to bland, like way too bland, because then they'll start stacking, like you guys said, 4 black mages or 4 whatever benefits the group the most, and then you start to screw up there. So I'm kind of okay with that. Are you guys okay with that? Like, do you think we should just stick if they have double jobs or not?
I think even situationally, double jobs shouldn't be penalized, I think, to begin with. Because most of the time it's not even that good. I can't think of an example where having 2 of the same job outside of very niche situations.
I mean, if you put a whole bunch of ninjas in there, would it not be That doesn't work out very well.
No, it doesn't really. There are other issues with like party composition right now and the way things work, in that range provide too much in terms of utilities, and strength buff is a thing as well. That tanks scale from strength. So just stacking ninjas means that you're losing so much in terms of resources for your healers, damage for your tanks, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, and those are all things that need to be addressed, as well as all the issues that we're talking about with caster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Balana, you're on board with that?
Yeah. I think I agree with Sfia on those points.
Okay. Jump.
No, I agree as well.
Okay.
Just reading in chat, one of my friends mentioned a group of my friends, they actually went and did last fight of creator with 2 paladin, 4 monk, 2 white mage. So you kind of get punished just for like bringing those comps and the no LB generation, the fact that there's not like a lot of variation to what you can do with your jobs. But if people want to run that, let them. Like I feel like even even like messing up the LB generation is kind of just like icing on the cake, just because bringing in double jobs is already like kind of minimizing the range of utility you have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I mean, that fight was cleared with 8 tanks, so.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when raiders get bored. What kind of happens, right? All right. All right. So we talked a lot about a lot of the stuff that I have on the doc sheet. We've kind of already gutted into a little bit here. So I don't know. I guess we already talked about like speed running. Well, we haven't talked too much about speed running. We could talk about speed running a little bit here. How casters get completely sidelined with speed running. I mean, Sfia, you were talking about black mages doing more DPS. Would that still bring them to speed runs?
Yeah, like if black mage was to do more damage, are you saying? Or
Yeah. If black mages were to do more damage, do you think?
When you do speedruns, it's literally just do everything that you can to have as much damage as possible. So you look at what the drawbacks would be from having a black mage, and that's probably less healer DPS and full uptime fights, because they don't have the MP required. Like necessarily, you can't donate them all the MP that you need, whereas double ranged could. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem in 08 specifically that we ran into. But ultimately, if the positives outweighed the negatives of black mage versus bringing a machinist, then you bring it. It's all about damage when you come to speed kills.
Okay, so the utility isn't wouldn't be the utility loss you would lose wouldn't be as valued versus the extra damage you would do.
When you're speed killing, you're doing it in BIS. So the utility loses a bit of value there immediately, because you don't need all these safety nets.
Well, utility as in moves
offensive utility?
Yeah, offensive utility.
Offensive utility, it's the same thing as personal damage. It's all just damage, net damage at the end of the day. And you can consider machinist personal and its hypercharge. Consider all that as what machinist brings, and then consider black mage's personal as what black mage brings. And if black mage's personal outweighs machinists, then you bring the black mage. It's really that simple. The one that lets you have the highest damage at the end of the day wins. So if it did, absolutely.
Okay. Quick question for you. Mana shift versus reverse. Should mana shift be adjusted anyway?
Reverse?
Oh, refresh. Sorry, I read that wrong. Yeah.
I think an interesting idea would be to make mana shift like a 5-second cooldown, so that you could just like spam, then make it super useful for black mage. Like every single ice phase, it could be like, oh, I can weave in, my mana shift here real quick. And then it would give something unique to black mages with still having it to everybody else. Because if a summoner red mage wanted to just end their life, they could just and then sit around and do nothing for a while. But I think that'd be shortening the cooldown to like a negligible cooldown would be interesting.
Okay,
that's a pretty cool idea. I'd never thought of that.
Yeah, I like it too.
All right. If you guys got more ideas, say them in chat, and we can talk about them here.
The refresh versus mana shift thing it's bad for a couple of reasons in terms of how mana shift works. First of all, the jobs that you have to use mana shift on Black Mage summon a Red Mage, you're losing something by doing it. Not so much on Summoner anymore because they run MP positive. But on Red Mage and Black Mage, Red Mages do run MP negative. If they donate MP, it means that in progression especially, they may not be able to raise down the line. Or they may get one less raise when shit hits the fan.
And that's why they're brought to the group.
Right,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's like you're kind of hurting yourself in the process by doing it. And Black Mage has this awful situation with mana shift where everyone thinks you can do it, but if they ever ask for it, you're like, oh, I can't do it right now. Can't do it now. Yeah. The only time that you can actually mana shift without hurting your own damage, either through clipping or getting rid of MP during your Astral Fire, is when you have a Thundercloud proc and you're in Umbral Ice and it's after your first global in Umbral Ice.
And it's raining on a Tuesday.
Yeah, you have all of these hoops to jump through to do it without actually damaging your own damage to help the team. And that sucks.
Yeah. All right. So while we're going through some of this stuff, I kind of want to talk about the flaws of a lot of jobs, or the flaws of players who are playing these jobs. Do you guys watch people who play casters on Twitch at all? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Jump doesn't give a shit about him. Balana.
I mean, every now and then, it's not something I actively seek out, but
okay. Is there anything like when you watch other people play casters that you're like, please stop doing this? Like, for example, Red Mage. Is there anything like you see a Red Mage playing and you're like, if you had to list the top mistakes every Red Mage does, what would we be talking about?
See, that's exactly why I don't watch other people play casters. I trigger it. I'm just like, oh, they're doing this wrong, doing all this wrong. I'm just like, oh.
What triggers you, jump?
For Red Mage specifically,
yeah.
Basically bad proc management. People let impact fall off all the time. You never let impact fall off as a Red Mage. People will go into your melee combo with a proc on the lower mana. If you know how Red Mage works, you have your white and black mana, and you have less white mana than more black mana, but you have enough mana for your melee combo. You're supposed to keep casting and move your proc to your black mana so that since your white mana is lower, when you go in, you'll get another free proc from the finisher. But people don't do that. People will, try and displacement at the worst times or not displacement because they're too scared to do it. They won't use swift cast outside of raises. There's just like so much utility, so much different ways you can manage your procs, and people kind of like, admittedly, managing your procs is not a huge DPS gain, and you can still do pretty well without it, which is why Red Mage is considered so easy. But when they don't do that, I just look at that and it really bothers me. Mm-hmm. And for casters in general, watching other casters, just there's a lot of ways that you can keep uptime, but people are just too scared of mechanics and they just kind of run around not casting for 10 seconds, and it's just.
So what you were saying about Red Mage optimization things, there's a lot that you can do with Red Mage to make it play better and to get better numbers. But the thing that I've noticed is that because the job is so dumbed down, you can not do any of that and still do good enough. And that's kind of why it's so attractive to so many people, and people pick it up. And at the start of Stormblood, especially, everyone's like, oh, this job's crazy. Look how strong it is, because people didn't know what they were doing on anything in the first couple of weeks.
No,
so you can play like pretty mediocre on Red Mage, and it doesn't actually reflect how good you are at the job, the damage that you put out, compared to other jobs.
So the skill ceiling, like you're a good Red Mage, then just right up here, you do a lot of the extra work, then you're a better Red Mage. Yeah. So it's not like really.
Well, the thing is, you can do a lot more, but it just gives you such a small gain because the punishments for not optimizing on Red Mage are so small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and an interesting thing to look at is as much as we all hate FF logs and that kind of culture, it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful tool, and it's a thing you can use. If you look up the range bands for each one of the classes, you can see like the trend lines over time, like where the percentiles fall. And I think if you go and look at that, the Red Mage percentile, like the gaps are going to be very squished together. The highs are going to be very not as spaced out from the lows as compared to something like Black Mage, where the people who can perform super well at it are going to be miles ahead of the people who are underperforming.
Yeah. Okay. We got a lot of questions coming in about just various things with casters here. I'm going to go ahead and ask this real quick. This one's from Harold here, who, if you don't know, he has bugged about a caster show for the Infinity. Like, as soon as the show's done, he's going to be like, okay, when's the next caster show? just keeps it coming, man. But okay. So the question that he wanted to ask was basically... the word for word. Can you ask about double or triple caster comps and what you would lose from taking it? So if you did a triple caster comp, what would you lose plus what would you gain?
I'll take it. Okay. What you'd lose. So immediately you have to think of what the fourth slot is. And you have to choose between either a ninja, dragoon, or probably a bard. Yeah. And immediately you just think, I'm losing damage anywhere. You take a bard, you're losing trick attack, you're losing threat tools, you take... you're also losing the strength buff for your tanks from the dragoon. You take a ninja, you lose refresh, you lose a lot of defensive utility, the ability to do mechanics without punishment, although Summoner can kind of do that now. You take the dragoon, you lose all those things those other guys brought. So the fourth slot is because all of the other jobs are so strong that you kind of have to have those main ones in there. So you lose everything that those big ones have. And then you think about what you're doing to your team just by having these very sort of one-dimensional jobs, which are a little bit of damage, a little bit of utility, and raises everywhere. So
Necromancer group.
You could do that.
Yeah.
I know that some groups, Wheelchair for one, for Sigmascape Normal, wanted to run double Red Mage. They forgot to do it. But for things like that, where you're going to go through and you want to one-shot everything, like, why not bring more Red Mages? Because damage doesn't actually matter in this game anymore. We haven't had a real DPS check. Like, the hardest DPS check we've had in Stormblood was week 1 Kefka, like Clown Kefka. That's the hardest DPS check we've had in Stormblood. That goes to show how easy damage is to do now.
How do you guys feel about that, though? I mean, like, how do you feel about them reducing that level?
I think that this, like, the skill in this game comes from navigating mechanics and doing high DPS at the same time, which is why A3 and A8 were such good fights. And that just doesn't exist anymore. So now that you don't actually have to worry so much about your damage, especially in Prague, well, you do have to worry about damage in Prague. It's something that happens, but when you play with good players, damage just sort of comes naturally, and you don't actually need to think, oh, what comp are we taking in anymore? That's not a thing. So you take the things that give you the best survivability. And so if you're running 3 casters, you lose Palisade, you lose Troubadour, Dismantle, you lose Feint. All of this really, really powerful stuff, and you get an Adel and an APOC.
And
That's
3
it.
matches.
And 3 mana shifts, which would be beaten by 1 single refresh.
Yeah.
You'll be really good at handling any magic damage that comes out to the party. That's
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, they're adding, like, when they reduce these checks, I guess they're like, well, these comps are viable. Before, comps weren't viable because they had to meet DPS checks, right?
I mean, with how Savage is lately, anything's viable, really.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if they increased it to where you had DPS checks to where certain comps couldn't really meet it or had to struggle really hard to meet it at the gear that they would have going into that turn for the first time.
Yeah, it'd almost be like raids would be hard or something.
Yeah, they would be difficult, right? But should job selection be a part of what Savage is? Should it be like anyone can go into Savage with whatever jobs they want, or should it be you have to pick certain jobs in order to progress properly throughout the game?
So this game, like, one of its biggest selling points is the fact that it has the armory system, and you can be any job on your main character that you want. And then they say, we're going to make all of this content clearable by any composition. I feel like that's really short-selling a really big and like positive point to the game. They absolutely could, like they'd have to fix the gearing in this game, but they could make it so that certain compositions were just mandatory for certain fights, and good players would then have to adapt and be proficient on multiple jobs to clear this fight. But they don't.
I mean, should that be a part of what the game's about? You have to play different jobs?
I think so, yeah. I think that being a caster, you kind of understand that already. You have to switch from Red Mage to Summoner or Red Mage to Monk, Machinist, depending on the content you're doing and what your team wants. Other jobs are starting to like think about this as well now, with Monk being brought to a more healthy state. Tanks are tanks, and healers, they all have their positives. Whereas when you have such like an underperforming role, you have to be really diverse and be able to bring everything that a caster can.
Okay. Balana, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, Goka's kind of getting into it a little bit here. There's this dichotomy going on where we have the Final Fantasy 11, switch between your jobs kind of mentality, and then we have this WoW mechanic shoved on top of it of you can only get loot once per week. You're limited in the amount of loot you get. So if you're trying to, play the field and play all these different roles and these different jobs, you're not gonna be able to gear them all together because of this lockout system on top of it. So it would, to kind of support that sort of play style, would require a bit of a reevaluation of the loot system, and that's just kind of the thing that jumped out at me.
Well, I mean, that would be an easy fix, though. I mean, it's not difficult to just say that this is all caster gear and it all goes in one category. This is all melee gear and it goes into one category. This is all physical range gear. It goes into one category, right? Well,
the thing is, like, you're not only... we're talking about playing multiple roles, being able to swap between things, need to have a specific comp for a specific fight. And if there's a fight where like, oh, we don't want any wizards for this one, then your wizard's fucked because he doesn't have any non-wizarding gear.
Is the simple solution to then just lock tomes and raid lockouts to roll?
That'd be interesting. That'd be difficult to pull off, and I'd love to see how they do it. But
okay,
that would have to completely rework how often you can get tomes and I'm not going to farm 450 tomes
per job.
Roles,
I don't know. Some people beat a Eureka within like a few days, right?
Yeah,
so people farm stuff.
But that's the thing. That's the thing with 14 and why we have like our XP roulette and shit. The developers really want this game to be something where like if you only have 1 hour a day to play, you're not going to fall behind people that like like this game and play it for 24 hours a day. Like you just need to do an XP roulette 4 or 5 times a week and you're capped. And doesn't matter how hard other people know life it, they will not get ahead of you unless they're clearing raid turns ahead of you. And again, you only have to clear it like before the lockout. So
yeah,
it's something I like. It's the reason why I can keep playing this game because I can't know life it like that. I can't even take days off for raid prog these days. So
I mean, a hardcore MMO that would make it to where you would have to know life it, like I guess EverQuest maybe was back in the day, can't exist anymore, can it?
I mean, there's some Korean grindfest MMOs out there. It's become a very Western mindset, is where this whole kind of lockout came from. With I think WoW was like probably one of the first ones to do it, because people were like, you would never catch up to the guy who sat there for 1,000 hours a week somehow, and got all the crazy special gear. So they had to put some sort of limiter in to keep the playing field at least a little bit competitive.
Well, I mean, back in the day when I first got into MMOs, and I don't know, I was like 12. I was playing this really crappy MMO that was a free-to-play MMO. You guys remember like the whole RuneScape genre of MMOs where you had these like little shitty kind of MMOs that would be out there? I played one called Tibia. All right. Did you know it?
I actually had a conversation about this game just the other day, but carry on.
It's horrible. I mean, at first,
more or less what I heard.
It's basically at the very beginning of the game, you would just kind of move. Your character wouldn't even have animation. It was just kind of going up and down. It would turn left and right, but like when it walked, it was just solid standing, moving like you're moving something like an action figure or something. I don't know. It was really bad, but it had no level cap. You would just keep leveling and leveling and leveling, and whoever played the most and grinded the most was the most powerful person in the game. And you could kill each other. If you died, you lost 10% of all the EXP total that you have. Not like in your level, Total 10% of all your EXP.
I mean, the uncapped level, they do that in BDO, don't they?
Do they?
It's a ridiculously steep curve once you get past 60, but there's some people who are like level 62, 63 out there.
I mean, how much of a benefit do you get when you get the 61 and 62 and so on? Like, what do they do when they do an expansion? Do they just like, oh, now you can get to 61 and 62 easier?
No, they add like new zones and stuff. I don't know. I'm not super into BDO. You'd have to ask somebody else. I don't think it's that huge of a gap between 62 and 63 or whatever, but it can take like months of doing nothing but going in and grinding every single day just to get to like 62 from 61. So.
And that's changed just because the market appeal, I guess. Do you feel like right now more people play? Actually, do more people play MMOs or do less people play MMOs than they used to back in the day?
Probably less.
Yeah?
Dead genre.
Dead genre. We're all playing a dead genre, guys. If we really wanted to play the best MMO, we'd play Facebook or something, right?
Yeah. Go play Tinder or Grindr or whatever.
Tinder or Grindr. Has real life experiences. Okay, sorry. This completely went sidetracked, but I thought it was interesting to talk about that. So getting back to casters, right? And how they are. We were talking about the topic of playing jobs and then seeing kind of mistakes and everything else before it completely diverged into multiple other topics. So I guess I'll go to you, Sfia, and we'll talk about black mages, okay? So when you see people playing black mages, what kind of mistakes are they making? What are things that are really the big issues? Even people who may be experienced with black mages, they do it all the time.
The biggest mistakes, I guess, you see, and this isn't really just specific to black mage, it's every job, is they just don't push enough buttons. They don't ride the GCD, they don't use things when they're off cooldown, that sort of stuff. They don't use 2-3 pots in a fight. That's like the basics of the basics. If you're not doing that, then the rest of the stuff that I'm going to say won't really matter, because you can get way more like improvement from really, really basic stuff. But a lot of people will, how to say, kind of fear mechanics too much and short sell their fire phases, which like getting as many fire 4s as you can is like priority number 1 for your damage. You want to get 6 fire 4s every fire rotation, maybe a flare if you're doing that. And then the next step, like what people will do is overcompensate movement or not plan ahead, and they'll respect the mechanic too much, whereas they could have just actually just maintained their normal rotation. They'll maybe drop out fire 4s for fire 1s and just lower their damage by not knowing what they can do, I guess, around that. The next big thing, I guess, is not knowing how to use procs properly. And it's difficult to teach people procs because there are so many different variations to situations that you can be in with what procs you have at what time and where you are in your rotation, because it's all random what you get. But there are certain priorities for movement. For example, where a fire starter is always priority 1 if you have to move. It's completely free damage, and I'll often see people do things like scathe when they have a fire starter, or use a thundercloud when yeah, that faces mine too, Balana. Or do things like use a thundercloud when they have a fire starter there, but their thunder dot is really high at the time, and they're just clipping a huge amount of time on that. Or clipping a GCD by hard swift casting into a fire 4 when they've got a fire starter there. Just things like that, which just improper use of procs. In terms of mobility, like I said, there's a priority where it goes, you want to use a fire starter first because it's completely lossless. Next is a thundercloud, depending on the duration of your dot. Next is a clipped swift cast. There are times when you can use scathe and it's okay. I don't think they're very good most of the time, but you can do it.
I mean, I don't think SE could get any more clear. They put in a raid called "Don't Scathe."
Yeah. But I mean, that's the general priority order of the way that you want to deal with these procs. There are things that you can do with them that are a bit more advanced as well, using transpose and pushing timers and things like that. and that's not necessarily like easy things that people should know intuitively, because it's not actually that intuitive when you think about it. And the last thing that I don't see people doing is the flare rotation, which is actually really cool, and I'm really proud of it. But pretty much you can manipulate your mana so that you have enough MP to flare at the end of a fire cycle once a minute. Doing that means that you can transpose, and you'll be using triple cast for it, so you get a buffed Blizzard 3 afterwards, and then can continue your rotation. Or if you know when your MP ticks are, you can skip Blizzard 3 entirely in some rotations with this. And yeah, there's a lot of potential. You can look at the best logs, like you can think you've run a run perfectly, you can do everything absolutely right. You can look back on your log and in hindsight see things that you could have done better, but at the time it doesn't matter. And that's kind of the issue with Black Mage, in that of course you could have done this better if you knew you were going to get a Thundercloud proc one global later after you just used your one now. But if you're playing the odds, then yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I got a question about that flare rotation actually.
Yes.
So let's say you go into your fire cycle and your triple cast is off cooldown. Is it worth to save the triple cast all the way until the end of the fire cycle, like 20 seconds later? Or
as long as you don't lose a usage, and you know when you okay. Everything about Black Mage is, and kind of almost all jobs now, is dependent on where you're going to end the fight. Because especially with Black Mage, you've got such a high disparity between your burst phase and your cooldown phase with Fire and Ice. And so if you end a fight, like after you've used a Blizzard 3, Thunder 3, Blizzard 4, you're like, those 3 globals are virtually worthless. So if you can know when the end of your fight is going to be, and this is what a lot of speedrunning has taught me about this job, if you count the number of thunderclouds and non-natural fire starters you get, natural fire starters you get, not from Sharpcast, you can dictate what your last global is going to be. And from that, you can count how many times to use the flare rotation to manipulate your last global to be always in fire phase.
God damn.
Yeah, it really sucks. It sucks. It's the worst experience I've ever had on this game. But it's really satisfying to get done.
So you speedrun on Black Mage then?
I've done a bit. We've done quite a lot of work. None of it's really like super competitive, because a lot of the stuff we're doing is we've been trialing people and a lot of prep for the upcoming tier. But the things that we do for speedrunning, I want to do on Black Mage because it's my main job, and I make sure that I'm still up to par on the other two. But yeah, I've been putting in a lot of time on it.
So side point, I guess, are you guys all ready for Ultimate? Do you guys have your groups ready and you're all ready to go in?
Yeah, we're going to be doing our first prog with our new healers, so let's see how that turns out.
Yeah?
It's always an exciting time.
Always exciting. How many new people do you have to your group jump? Just one?
Just the 2 healers.
Oh, 2.
Our healers were a couple when they left, and so we had to...
Isn't that the worst? Couples who raid together?
I mean, it worked out. It worked out. They were good players, and we enjoyed their company. It's just,
the stigma from that, it never goes away. I mean, I raided with my fiance for almost the entirety of all my raiding. I was happy with it, but I was at the couple. I wasn't the people outside. I don't think my group minded because most of them stuck around. So, anyways, Sfia, do you have any new people in your group? Or you?
Yes, actually, we've changed out the healers. So we have brought back a certain yellow duty boy from, what are they called? Entropy. He's come back.
Oh, what the hell do they call Entropy? That
Entropy. Yeah.
Those
I
angry
always
people.
forget the name. Yeah, angry dudes.
Yeah.
And picked up Solitary as well in Scholar. So been putting in a lot of time getting those guys acclimated with us. So feeling pretty good.
Okay. Balana, I know you've been kind of out of touch for a little bit, but is your group ready to go?
I mean, we're still solidifying everything. We're still getting that, make sure all our pieces are in the right place. But we're not intending to go as hard as other teams. But we're gonna do like 2 or 3 days just because we like doing blind prog. We're not assuming we're going to get a clear in those 3 days, just because based off of the previous ultimate. But yeah, we're looking forward to Uwu.
I've never heard it actually like verbally said.
Really?
No,
I've heard it too much.
it's worse than I expected.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question from Ayaliz. You guys, do you guys know Ayaliz?
Ayaliz?
Yeah, Ayaliz. Maybe you guys know it. I don't know.
Good pen.
Okay. You guys made it sound like double ranged meta is still a definite way speedruns are played when Summoner is currently in 3 out of 5 the number 1 speed groups this tier. Shouldn't the focus be on Black Mage, Red Mage underperforming as jobs rather than casters underperforming as a role when Summoner is doing well in speedruns and both Red Mage and Summoner have their places in progression?
Right. I did actually mention earlier that the gap now is very, very small, and I think that Machinist is not what it was previously, and it's not the mandatory, you need this for the slot.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what it can provide offensively and defensively, though, I think it's kind of unfair to the casters. But Summoner is in a pretty healthy spot, even after the pretty light nerfs it got previously.
Yeah,
I don't think that was needed. But sorry, carry on.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I perhaps overstated how big Machinist is.
Mm.
Well, yeah, it's mostly what Sfia was saying, because we were mostly talking about Prague, not much speedrunning. And when you have Machinist, you have your Palisade, you have your Refresh, and they evidently bring a lot more than a Summoner would. But when it comes to speedrun and what you care about is the damage, and the rest of that utility is now becoming a safety net, you don't really need a second Refresh except for 8, then yeah, Summoner, it starts getting up there with Machinist. Machinist doesn't become as powerful as necessary. Yeah. We're still not seeing Black Mage in speedruns or Red Mage. I would argue that you don't want to bring Red Mage up to par in speedruns. This is one thing that everyone's always been, complaining about every patch. The Red Mage challenge, the balance of score. Oh man, again, Red Mage gets no buffs, man. SE hates us, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always the one saying, you guys are stupid. Red Mage does not need buffs, okay? The reason I'm saying that is because, Red Mage has its place in Prague. And as we have mentioned before in the show, where you can do very well on Red Mage with very little effort, that translates to also doing a lot more DPS in Prague. I don't know how many of you people look at the numbers for first clears. Red Mage is always first or second. And Embolden is not trivial. It's definitely one of the weaker raid buffs, but it's not like it brings nothing. Red Mage brings a lot of damage for Prague on top of their raises and their mana shifts. And if you buff them even more, they're just going to be completely broken for Prague, more than they already are. Not every job has to be speedrun viable to be a viable job to play.
Mm-hmm. And this is a related question from Goka here. He says, why does balancing jobs matter? If every job is viable, World Team Progs will pick the best anyways. It could be only in one job, of course, per role. Everyone else can clear with any job. And that's true. I mean, that's kind of what we think is happening. Well, I guess the question is, should Square Enix put the resources into trying to make these jobs even more balanced to where you can have more choices going into World Prog or going into, not I guess World Prog, but going into hardcore rating groups. You had more choices than this is the optimal group. You had more than just one set. Does that make sense? You had multiple different sets of optimal groups.
So I think there's kind of 2 points there. The first one being does everything need to be perfectly balanced? No. I think that there needs to be a small disparity between the jobs, as small as possible, but there's no way that they're ever going to get every single job at an exactly equal level. That's not happening. They do need to remove the outliers, and the outliers have historically been, in this expansion, Black Mage and Samurai. They've kind of addressed Black Mage. They still need to address Samurai, and I think that is really important because currently it's actually a detriment to the team. But in terms of being able to clear content, you still want to make your contribution to the team as much as possible. And one of the things that was brought up a lot, and I did an official forums big whiny thread about Black Mage a while back. And one of the biggest sentiments from all the Black Mage mains who came in there and talked was that every time they play Black Mage, they feel like they're actively hurting their team because they're not playing something else. They're not doing more damage by playing a summoner or a machinist. They're not helping with raises if they're playing Red Mage and Prog. It's just, you don't actually provide anything unique and of value to your team that no one else can do better.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
that's something that no job should actually, have to feel. Everything needs its own unique strengths, and I think they've done a pretty good job for most classes in this game, except for Black Mage, and Summoner's kind of a little bit in betweeny. It doesn't feel that have that much of an identity, I feel, but Black Mage, Samurai especially are that.
Well, I mean, like, if you also talk about certain roles making you feel bad, like, for example, a Dragoon in a group of a Bard, as soon as you get off Dragoon, you're like, I've just pissed off the Bard completely, and probably the rest of the group in different ways, but the Bard will hate me. That actually happened in my group. The Dragoon wanted to play Samurai. He was like, I just want to play Samurai. And the Bard was just like, I ain't having this shit. We had to get to some sort of like scenario where sometimes he'd play Dragoon, sometimes he'd play Samurai. It just depended. And every time that he was playing Samurai, the Bard was upset. He's like, I'm not having a good raid night. And if you feel like you're bringing that to the group, it kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, I agree. Funny enough, I'm not a Dragoon, but as a Red Mage, I do get the same flack from my group whenever I try and play Black Mage. It's just like, oh man, fucking no emboldened. They also complain about how I greet them as Black Mage because I'm pretty greedy, selfish Black Mage sometimes. But it does suck. But at the same time, I think we want to be careful with trying to give everyone raid utility, because then you just start moving towards homogenizing all the jobs, and a lot of jobs are not going to have their uniqueness, which is why I'm kind of with Sfia in that, like, if you want to try and balance Black Mage, don't give him raid utility, try and give him a little more damage. And evidently, yeah, you're going to have,
you're still pissing off the rest of your group.
You're still pissing off the rest of your group. Unfortunately, that it's going to be that way. But, it also depends on your group. You're only going to be pissing off your Bard Machinist if they, like, super care about their DPS. But, like, let's say you're playing with your friends, and, like, your friends aren't that good. Maybe you're quite a bit better than them. You're bringing Ninja to buff your, not so good friends. You're probably going to bring more raid DPS if you bring a Black Mage and just wreck the DPS, because your friends can't not make as good use of your utility. So I think Black Mage still has its place. It's not necessarily, up there with the speedrunners, but it's not like, Black Mage or Samurai. By the way, like Sfia was saying, that they kind of fixed Black Mage and they still need to work on Samurai. They did say in the live letter that they're going to give Samurai some buffs this next time. So look forward to that, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. We'll know in about a week, right?
Yeah, next live letter is 11th, I think, right? May 11th?
Yeah. Yep, it's Friday. Guess what next week's show is going to be about, guys?
Chocobo Racing.
Oh, lovely.
It's going to be about Blitzball when they announce it, right?
Yeah.
Next live letter.
Still waiting. Still waiting.
But yeah, I guess that's something we haven't really hit on too much, and it's actually a pretty important topic. I mean, when we start talking about players who are not even like great players, just good players who want to be good at the game. They want to be, hey, I want to have something else to do past just clearing the content. Then they start looking at their raid numbers and everything else. But that starts to not feel great if your group isn't optimized to boost your raid numbers. And so then you have this whole aspect of, if I raid with these certain jobs, then I'm affecting my desirability in the group and people having fun and enjoyability of the raid with my particular group. That's not a hardcore group, but just like a mid-core group, right? Just these guys aren't having as much fun because I'm coming in as someone who's not making them look good, and that kind of sucks. I mean, that's something that we have to get our minds out of, but that, again, the whole FF logs thing has kind of changed a lot of people's mindsets about how to be happy in raids. Right?
Well, I mean, that mindset has its roots in early Heavensward, where you actually needed to do a lot of damage, like to get through A3, to get through the Hand of Pain. You needed to do lots of damage. So then team comps started getting built and designed around dealing lots and lots of damage. And then on top of that, like in ARR, it was all about play safe, let's clear. Everyone was running Monk for the Mantra. Oh, actually, everybody had Mantra at the time, but there were comps out there that were very popular due to their kind of defensive utility. But once the DPS thing started happening, once people started seeing you could skip mechanics by doing a lot of damage, like the whole mindset really started going towards, oh, we need to do as much damage as possible. We got this website now where we can rank everybody's damage. Oh, I want to do the most damage possible because that and get it really high on the website. So it's this snowballing kind of damage mentality that has kind of seeped into the raid scene, and even though it's not as necessary as it was at the beginning of Heavensward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the thing that I see with a lot of mid-core groups that I see some of my friends and my roommate too, is that like when you have a mid-core group, it somehow is always divided in that like half of them really care about their damage and really want to do good, and the other half are just like, I don't care, I just want to clear content, I just want to get my loot, and it's a pretty big problem, I would say, in the mid-core rating scene right now. And so it's definitely something like a group has to sit down and talk about. Like generally, if you want to play like Black Mage, but your group wants to do well, so they want you to play Machinist or something, try and sit down with the group, try and work something out with them. Be like, you know what, for weeklies, I'm going to play the class that I want until we get our clears, and then we can come back and redo those turns, and I'll play Machinist for you guys so you guys can get your parses, and add an extra raid day to your week. Maybe most groups don't have those kind of days in the week, but it's definitely something you want to talk about with your group rather than like causing arguments or leaving.
Yeah. So I've never really thought about that before now, because that's how my group was too. Half the people in there is like, I like playing this job, so I'm going to play this job. And the other half was like, I want high numbers, so I'm going to do high numbers. And so when you mix that together, you kind of get a regular raid group. It's not like anything that's super special there. What are you laughing at, Balana?
I just like the way you said a regular raid group.
It is a regular raid group. That's what it is.
And that's how true it is, because I'm not in like typically in like the world progression kind of cutting edge group, and there definitely is that kind of distinction between some of the players I played with. That there's the people who are let's clear, let's do this stuff, and then there's the people who are all about the optimization and getting the highest numbers, and you can typically tell at the end of the fight who's who, just based off how much damage they've been able to put out from their job.
Mm-hmm. All right. By the way, Sfia, I really like your curtains in the background. I really like them. It makes me feel like I'm actually on a talk show. Like, the curtains that are usually in the background of like...
It's just my bedroom curtain. Like, the sun was coming up when we started, so I didn't want to have it open because it would be going straight through. But
I'm literally going to get that and just put it on everybody's, like, behind their, like... their images here and make it look like we're like on the Eric Andre show or something like that, and then we'll just start doing stupid shit during the show where I just start screaming randomly. You know what? The podcast scene for Final Fantasy 14 is missing the Eric Andre side of podcasting here, I think. So we need to like up the ante here. You guys up for making a new show with me?
Oh gosh, are we gonna call it Elysium Talk?
We'll call it Elysium Talk, and we'll just start screaming in the middle of it. It's like, oh yeah, this is exactly what Elysium is.
Yeah, we'll shoot Sfia in the middle of it and be like, why? How could SE do this?
And all of a sudden just start throwing yellow hats at people. I don't know. Are throwing them away, right? Because he's gone now. It's just out of here. Okay, all right. So let me get back to this. I kind of got caught up in the conversation, lost track of where we were with it. We're taking little breaks and talking about the disadvantages for different jobs here. And you know what? I'm coming down to Balana, because we're going to talk about Summoner and what triggers you with Summoner. I feel like I've asked this question on a different show.
Probably.
To you.
Probably. I don't know. I've been on too many of these. They all blur together.
I gotcha. It does for me, too. I'm going to just tell you, there are some moments where people come up to me and they start talking. I was like, have they been on MogTalk before? I was like, have they been on my show before? It's 143 of these now, man. It's just over 3 years.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways.
I'm glad you remember me, at least, Frosty.
Of course. Balana, what do people fuck up with Summoner?
Oh, jeez. I mean, it runs the gambit. I've seen people. There was somebody linked me a log the other day where their opener was like 8 OGCDs in a row with no like ruin in between. It's the biggest thing. There's just the ABCs. Always be casting. Always keep that global turning. Try to limit your ruin 2 usage as much as possible. Stack up your OGCDs before your ruin 2s if you can. If you can get away with that. And then I mean the part I like least about Summoner right now, and which I still find the most difficult, is Bahamut in general.
Mm-hmm.
Good old worm waves and ghosting. Oh gosh. So if you weren't aware, it's possible when you have Bahamut out for him to use abilities that get registered in ACT but then don't actually do damage in the game. And that's called ghosting. You can have that happen with worm waves. You can have that happen with Ockmorn. Like if you Ockmorn and Bahamut starts his animation and then he goes away, ACT will register it as, hey, you know, you cast Ockmorn, here's the damage. But then in the game, for some reason, the damage doesn't actually happen. This happens all the time with worm waves as well. So I really wish they would do something about that. But basically, how I end up doing it is I just do the suboptimal thing, just throw as many GCDs and OGCDs at it as I can to try to mitigate the potential ghosting issue. Sfia's a lot smarter about it than me. I didn't play Summoner when Stormblood first came out because it was kind of trash. I leveled it first and I'm like, oh geez, this kind of sucks. And then I was like, I guess I'll play Red Mage forever. And then once they buffed it, I started relearning it. So there's still a lot of things I'm picking up. But there's a lot of things that I can see that people can improve on as well.
Okay. There is a question in chat about a Summoner and the apparent hacking that goes with the Rune 4.
Yes. This is the worst part about Summoner. What I really loved about Summoner back in the day is there was no proc garbage. There was no weirdness. It was everything. You could plan every single global down to every second, every fight. And I love that. But now you have these, you've Rune 4 procs, which whenever your pet attacks, there's a chance your Rune 2 turns into Rune 4. And on top of that, when you cast Rune 4, the cooldown of your Enkindle goes down. But what people can do is, because the Rune 4 proc is handled client side, technically it's a valid action for you to send to the server, hey, I'm casting Rune 4 right now. The game's just like, cool. So what people do is they hack the game to spoof the packets they're sending to allow themselves to cast Rune 4 when they shouldn't be able to, even without it. And that's the hacking that was going on. It's really obvious if you see it on FF logs, they'll have more Rune 4 casts than procs. So that's the smoking gun on that right there.
Apparently it's happening in PvP right now too with Warm Wave, but
it wouldn't surprise me.
I was glad I know that. Now I can complain about it and hopefully something will get done. So yeah.
No, that's been around since the beginning of Stormblood. It's been around for about a year now. They haven't done anything about it. So.
I mean, I guess they would just have to change how that registers. Would that screw up the job if they changed how it read?
Yes.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to Rune 4 as immediately as you can right now because the proc is handled client side.
Okay. Can they do that with any proc though, or is that just Rune 4?
I think they do it with Summoner because it's not a huge thing. You're doing, a 200 potency instead of 100 potency cast, but I think people do that because they can slip it in there and get away. There's lots of other things people do that are real bad.
Oh, it's using a PvP action in PvE. What?
That's Ungarmax right there.
That's some Unga.
Yeah.
Ungarmax is a squadron action, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you're right. Wait, what PvP action has been used in PvE? I don't even want to know.
I guess you might be able to cast Worm Wave.
Yeah.
Wait, really?
I don't know. I wouldn't surprise me if there's something people could do, but I hadn't heard of that myself.
Oh, that would suck.
And Harold tells me that the Rune 4 hack is fixed now. So.
Oh, good.
I was condemning SE a little bit too early there.
Okay, so Warm Wave is being used in PvE. Okay. Well, now we got to figure out how to stop that Ungermaxing. We had a whole show discussing this, saying that it wasn't good to Ungermax, guys. Come on. We had the whole show. Jump. You learned your lesson.
Yeah, our Astro
Okay.
got banned.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. All right. So let's see what else we have here for. I don't want to ask these questions yet because they're stupid. I'll ask them a little bit later, but they're the trollier kind of questions here. So when someone comes in, I guess, and we start talking about like what we can kind of see the future of casters, the future of like Square Enix and how they're going to handle casters. You guys have all been playing this game for a while, right? Yeah. Where do you guys see casters going? Are we going to stay kind of in the same position, or are they actually going to... Can you see Square Enix making some adjustments to how they work, maybe even going forward into the next expansion that may change the dynamic? I mean, we're not getting our caster, right? It's not happening. But they're going to have to change how those three work together in the group. And besides just giving Black Mage more damage, what else could they really do?
So, I mean, there are lots of ideas that people, just theory craft and things that they make up that could work. A really big problem that I see with, another problem that I see with casters being so bad is that there are 5 people in the party who do physical damage. And they all buff physical damage. And you've got healers, which do significantly less damage than tanks, which are the only other 2 magic damage dealers in a group. So already the disparity between physical and magical damage in a party is it's large. It's heavily in physical favor. So obviously physical buffs are contributing more to a party than magical buffs. So what I think could happen going forward is things like a magic damage dealing tank, or allowing healers, I don't really want this, but allowing healers to do tank levels of damage, or magic damage dealing melee DPS. All those sorts of things which would then sort of encourage synergies between magic damage dealing classes, because then it would be a higher representation or a higher portion of your full damage spread.
Do you think we're going to get into magic meta build and then a physical meta build?
I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
I would love it too. But I think that would be something more down the line that we mentioned before. Maybe a long time down the line when we have a lot more jobs to choose from.
I mean, you're getting a magic tank when a blue mage comes out, right?
Ostensibly. I mean, yeah, it's something that could be pulled off maybe 2 expansions. Adding 4 more jobs to the game could be disruptive
and
enough.
A physical healer with Dancer.
There you go. Yeah.
Sorry, Balana, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, you're hitting right on the point that I was making, that if we adding 2 classes in some upcoming expansion, maybe not enough to kind of create a magic meta group, but with the right pieces of 4 different jobs together, then there could be some interesting combinations that come out.
Yeah. I think that's what I would want to see the most, is that, of course, there's going to be one group that's going to be the best. It doesn't matter if it's magic, physical, or whatever, but I want to see just different builds that you could take these different jobs in, different ways you can put together the pieces to make a cool group. And it feels like there's only one option to do it right now.
Yeah, just because how heavily weighted everything is towards physical.
No.
I'm kind of liking where it is right now. Summoner is beating out Machinist for some of the fights. Double range is prevalent in some of the fights. Some of the fights, like 6, you can easily do triple melee, and that does really well. But in other fights where, having 3 melee and 2 tanks is way too much around the boss for certain mechanics, and you lose a lot of uptime, it's not as ideal. I feel like it's already kind of heading towards that direction, The difference between a caster and a range is not as large as it used to be. Like back in Heaven's Word, man, if you were an orange caster, but you could at least play a range to a purple level, the range would still bring the faster kill time, That's definitely not true in Stormblood anymore. Your range would have to be at least almost as good as your caster for it to actually turn out to be some kind of gain for your raid DPS.
By the way, Layla and Goka are completely shitting all over the concept of having a magical and a physical group. They said it sucked and it was horrible back in Final Fantasy XI.
I'm kind of it. I feel like it can be done. You just need enough jobs. 11 has a lot of them. Right now, 14 doesn't have too many, and they're not adding too many for expansion. And because we have that many, having magical and physical separated right now is kind of weird because you just like you don't really have enough for a magical comp. So any raid buff that gives magical raid DPS is kind of considered like shit.
Well, I mean, but they're saying they don't like the idea. They don't want it to happen. Like they don't want the thought of alienating people into different groups or categories of what kind of raid groups they have to run with. Do you think that would actually turn into a bad thing?
I think having more choice is always a good thing, as long as the choices aren't like completely polarizing. You have to do this or have to do this. It's like, right now it's you have to have a Dragoon. If you're going for kill time, you have to have a ninja. You have to have a paladin right now in pretty much all situations. These things are just like, you have to. If you have options which may be slightly inferior but stronger in other areas, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't see how that could be unhealthy for the game.
I mean, ultimately, people are going to see, like, oh, this physical group is 1% better than magical one. Magic groups are shit. Later kids. Like,
Yeah.
I can see it being a problem for, like, pugging. If you want to get 8 people together and half of you are physical meta and half of you are magical meta, then it just obviously won't work out as well.
mm-hmm.
And so you'd have to account for that. But I just want some way of more choices within the game in terms of jobs.
Okay. Yeah, and that's how it's going to happen. It's going to be 2 jobs per expansion. So we'll get our next 2 next year. All right. And then we'll get 2 more. Isn't that kind of interesting thinking we're going to know what the next expansion is going to look like within a year? We're going to have a pretty strong idea about everything we want to know about the expansion this time next year. Okay, so we think so, right? Unless if they push it into a couple more patches and really
they
stretch
could pull a big bamboozle at FanFest this year and be like, we're not revealing expansion. Surprise, we have 1 more raid for you.
Yeah. You know how disappointing? I've been to both FanFests, and you have that preview video, right? And you go in there, and everyone's ready. They're like, this is the 3rd video. We're about to get the 3rd expansion here for the trailer and everything else. And then they show patch trailer. It's like an expansion CGI. You get a patch trailer.
I think people just like stand up and walk out. Like they wouldn't even stay until the video finishes playing. Just, like everybody just walks out of the auditorium.
Oh God, that would. I don't know. I just the thought of that is extremely hilarious to me. I can't. All right, I'm good. All right, question, Chiller. Why would you take a good black mage over a good summoner? Well, it depends on how bad that summoner is, right?
Was it good black mage over a bad summoner?
Yeah, I mean, but a good black mage over a good summoner, there's not really a lot of reason to, unless if it's your friend.
You take the people who suit your times better, probably. Depends on like the needs of your static. If you're progging, you like that person should be able to play all 3 of them. To be honest, there's no reason not to. They're all simple enough. Jobs in this game aren't very difficult. But if the person can only play black mage or only play summoner, and they're both of like a relatively samey level, you'd take the summoner, assuming all other conditions were identical.
Well, I mean, because the situation is both we talked about this already in the show. Summoner can even work for speed runs at this point. Summoner could work for progression groups at this point because they can bring in resurrection still. They're not as good as red mage, but they can still do it. So summoner is just in a really good spot. So
Yep.
All right. Here's a good one from Kiwi here. How do you feel about the caster meta in Eureka? Do you think black mage needs buffs to bring it up to the level of red mage?
I mean, isn't the only spell you cast in Eureka for raise? Like,
yeah, I would say so.
So obviously, everybody just needs Verays. They need to really balance that out. Everybody should have Verays in
yeah, Eureka, you should just get it.
Yeah.
They could do something like they did with Palace of the Dead, where everybody can like occasionally get a Phoenix Feather. You know? Yeah. I mean, they gotta fix the balance in solo Palace of the Dead, guys. they gotta fix that balance. It's dominated by red mages.
It's
only
dumb.
play with 2 people, and they're both red mages.
Yeah.
What is this?
Come on. Give some more balance to this content. If you want this to be serious content players take seriously, balance out solo queue or solo Palace of the Dead. Come on.
Yikes.
All right. Let's see. This is a longer one. From Xenotan, I think. Most people tend to agree that learning a fight on Black Mage is very different than other classes. Sfia mentioned counting procs to the end of the fight on Astral Fire, for example. Is it really so bad for there to be a class that's the most difficult but rewarding to play?
It's not rewarding enough for that difficulty is the problem. I think I like the challenge of that. I dislike how little you get from it. Is about as well as I can sum that up. It doesn't give you enough for how much you have to put in.
I mean, and that's kind of what players want to see. If a job's going to be difficult, might as well make it better than the other jobs at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, it's difficult, not skill floor. Skill floor of Black Mage is like anyone can hit a dummy and do the rotation because it's actually brain dead. But to optimize it, it's the most reactive class. It's except maybe healers because there's actual differences in damage going in. You have to play reactively. You have to think ahead. You have to count server ticks. It's all kinds of horrendous stuff like that.
All right. So let's see. Next question here. This is from IHP or something like that. This is for Jump. This is question for Jump. Can you explain why people say Aether has more traps than Primal?
Aether has more, like, okay, define trap. We talking about people or cards?
I think it's in reference to people, yeah. Like groups, party finder groups, so you join into, yeah.
Can I explain why Aether has more traps than Primal? I mean, I'm in Primal, I don't play in Aether. I don't explain that. I think just because if you actually look at the division of the servers, Aether has 13 servers and Primal has 11. I don't know why it's not 12-12. It's a 13-11. So Aether actually just predominantly has more people, and the more people you have, they're going to suck. So the more traps you're going to get. That'd be my education.
Good guess. The answer they wanted is that Aether sucks, but I mean, that still works.
I think the answer they want is that Aether has more traps because they have Balmung and people like to ERP over there.
Because ERP doesn't translate to rating.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Different type of trap.
Yeah. Ooh. All right. Nox Arrow. Let me see if I can read this right. How do speed run teams deal with gearing casters and other jobs that may be viable in speed runs? Since gearing a caster would take away from gearing a monk or physical ranged. I think when we talk about speedrunning doesn't really start until everyone's geared, right?
Yeah.
I think they're referring to like the 8 weeks or however long it takes you to get BIS. What do you do in that time? Because if you're currently gearing your summoner, red mage, black mage, you're not gearing your monk or machinist that you could be doing it on.
I gotcha.
Our group isn't really a speed kill group, so I can't comment, but Jump probably has a better idea.
Well, my group isn't like a super serious speed kill group. We still only run once or twice a week, whereas the top speedrunners are running more than that from what I hear. What we do, though, we do double clears. So I have an alt. His name is Bounce Boy, and he mains machinist. So on our second set of clears, he just gets all the machinist loot, and he's already BIS. But I think it was still important for us to gear my red mage, so that my red mage was for sure BIS before the next ultimate, because I'm going to be progging on ultimate, not machinist. So, but
progging ultimate on machinist?
No, did I say that? I'm progging ultimate on red mage.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was like, Jesus, fuck.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely progging ultimate on red mage.
Okay.
All the way to the end, I'm clearing on red mage too.
All right.
But yeah, double clear is not really an option for a lot of group because it requires all 8 members to have 2 characters.
But for any loot issue, that's unfortunately the only way to alleviate it is to have a second set of characters in loot stack.
Yeah. Which people do.
Yep.
And
So.
even if you're not like gearing casters, double clearing is still good because like, you're getting a whole second set of drips and twines to upgrade your left and right side gear and stuff. Everybody will have a weapon by week 4, because you have 8 coffers by then.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, all right. Okay, so I think that wraps up the questions here. We can kind of get into the final closing bits. It's been about 2 hours. We've done about 2 hours here.
I didn't think we'd have that long of a show.
Yeah, well, I guess casters are kind of interesting in a way. Much better than how I made it seem at the very intro of the show here. But I hope black mages get buffed up in some way that makes them like more amazing. People are like, oh, black mages are overpowered. I want key jobs in Final Fantasy to just be overpowered. Like white mage, I want it to be kind of just overpowered because it's to me a key job of Final Fantasy. There's just certain things, but that's just my personal opinion. But I think the state of casters in this game, hopefully it'll change. Hopefully people who just like playing casters will get a little bit more bones thrown to them besides red mage. And I guess summoner kind of is getting up there too. But do you guys have any last words? Not shout outs, but just... actually, let's do both. Let's combine both. Last words and shout outs into the same one. Let's try doing that. Sfia, any last words you want to say about casters, followed by some shout outs you'd like to do?
I think we've kind of covered everything I wanted to say today.
Okay.
Yeah. No, as far as shout outs, my FC. Yeah, my raid team. Good.
Yeah.
And
good.
get Frosty. Yeah, that's it.
That's so fucking short. I was like expected 5 minutes here. It's like, all right. Okay. Balana?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Frosty.
Of course.
Always a fun time on here.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about me and follow me or whatever, I'm on Twitter at Balana Raw. I think it's written the same way it is right there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been streaming lately. Might start that up again soonish. Big shout outs to Elysium, everybody in the free company. Shout outs to my raid team and Mr. Happy and all those cool people on there. Shout outs to everybody on Gilgamesh and Aether as a whole, the whole community, all you crazy people. You are what makes the game interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's just like,
Yeah. Just had to one up me, didn't you?
it was easy. You didn't even say anything. Jump, thank you for coming on the show. It's been great having you here. You're an awesome addition for the Caster Show. I'm glad Sfia recommended you and we were able to get you on here. Shout outs that you'd like to do, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was fun being here. Well, before the shout outs, you just said we get to say one last thing.
You can
I just want to say...
No, not you. No. No, go ahead.
No, I just want to say to all my red mages out there, don't give up hope. Just because red mage is not as desired after prog doesn't mean that we're not a bad class. Red mage is still definitely my favorite job to play. And at the same time, be more open-minded, have a desire to play other jobs, because as we have mentioned this caster show several times, casters are definitely, if you want to play the caster role, you have to be diverse. You have to be able to play, all the casters, and even machinist or bard if it comes down to it. So be open to trying other roles. As for my shout outs, shout out to my free company, my Static Unreal of Behemoth. Love these guys. It's been a fun 1.5 years raiding with them. Shout out to my roommate, who's currently doing a huge favor for me, Chashu of Leviathan. And shout out to my friends in Sargatanis. They know who they are. So good at the game.
It's just Sargatanis assholes. You ever heard that? It gets a bad rep, man. Sargatanis gets such a bad rep. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, they're very close community in Sargatanis. I actually play Dungeons and Dragons with them now, so they're really cool guys. Shout out to them.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. Thank you, everybody, for being on the show. You guys were a great cast. I don't think I would have it any other way for our caster show for today. Except for I would have probably brought Black Cat on instead of Balana, but, I just fucking...
Yeah. I would have too.
But guys, thank you for coming and watching. I hope this was a nice episode for you. I plan to do a few more rating episodes before Ultimate comes out. They may be pinpointed towards more direct things like rating raid leading or rating a group or static general shows or progression general shows. But we'll see how that works out. I will be having probably next week's show on the live letter since it happens on Friday or Saturday morning for us in North America, so it's the obvious thing to talk about. We'll probably pull out the key points in regards to rating, and we probably won't talk about PvP. I've learned my lesson. I can't have a PvP show unless it's dedicated to PvP, and that's the only thing we talk about. But we'll talk about all the important key points there. We will not talk about Glamour, though, most likely. Also, if you guys want to get better and you want to join a Discord, I don't give them a shout out enough, but you guys, I guess the Balanced Discord is like the place to go to become a better player in certain ways, right? No? Do you guys have opinions on that? None of you guys care.
I'm a bit biased there since I'm a balanced mentor.
Okay.
So I would definitely recommend going. If you're a red mage and you come to the red mage channels, you'll definitely be helped. Some of the other channels, there's kind of a lot of trolling, but yeah, it depends on the job.
Okay. Check it out, guys, if you want to. If you're interested in just talking about jobs. If you like this show, you're probably interested in that Discord. And guys, if you like the show, do whatever you do to support streams and podcast to show your support. Thank you all for watching. Yeah, I really do appreciate it. All the mods that are out there. Andre Kane for the music that he lets us use for the intro and the closing of the show. Blizana for the artwork that we have on the show for the frames. And again, guys, we'll see you next week. Remember to be good, keep cool, and stay frosty. Say bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya. How long we gotta wait?